So, Scrimrunner, welcome to the program, and thank you for being here on this anniversary, the 75th anniversary of the Roswell recovery of alien.
Thank you for having me.
You're welcome. So let's begin with giving the audience just a sense, without revealing your identity, a sense of your background. Perhaps talk about your childhood and your father's career. Then you can tell us this information that you wish to share about Foo Fighters.
Okay. My father spent most of his time in World War II as a radio mechanic, was his official title. However, he was involved in some compartmental matters. He was chosen out of all the different services, 9 men, to work on the same project. There is some historical documentation. You can go back and find a operation called Operation Aphrodite, which involved creating some of the world's first drones. They were radio controlled, and my father actually built and helped design the equipment. Not only that, but also installed the equipment during World War II. Afterwards, he was a FCC advisor, which lasted all the way through the 70s and 80s. He had a lot to do with the redistribution for digital broadcast when it was first introduced back in the 80s. And currently, he is flying his own somewhere in the heavens.
That's a nice way of putting it. And we thank your father for his service, and we thank you for this information that you're going to share with us regarding his insights. Now, you said that you had some visuals, background visuals that you wanted to put on.
Yes, I do. I can bring up some compilations here. Some of it rings with this conversation, some of it doesn't. But it's a good compilation. I figured people would like to take a slower, closer look at some of these phenomenons. We have been completely hoodwinked, and I'll just tell you that right now. Now, Tesla came out with lift devices, ionic propulsion, very early. We can show the fact that we had a lot of these principles prior to the turn of the century in the 1900s. One of the explanations that have been brought forth is those that have been working in these fields were actually building their own privately built aircraft and was flying them as early as 1890s.
I have seen the blueprint. He had patents, and Tesla had a patent for a flying saucer in 1899, and I got to see that patent, and it was roughly constructed of triangular copper plates. That he connected to create an oscillating wave of electricity, which he said when it got to a certain frequency, it neutralized gravity. And I saw later on when the Germans came out with the Haunebu, the earliest pictures of the Haunebu betray that design. They stole Tesla's design and they built the first Haunebu, the one that looks like a clunky, sharp-edged circular wing with a kind of like a turret on top before it got refined and more aerodynamically smoothed out. That was
now, there was the Honeyvoo, and then there was also the Vril, which is the
yes,
average size of maybe a F-15 or something of that nature. And the Honeyvoo could actually swallow one of these Vrils and carry one with them.
Yes, yes, I've seen the plans for the Andromeda. That's what they called the mothership. It's like an aircraft carrier, and the design showed compartments that we could carry up to 6 or 7 of the Vril craft. And this is how the motherships do operate. They came in 1946 and 47, took equatorial orbits, and then deployed the smaller craft, which came down to do the reconnoitering, and 2 of which, or maybe even 3 of which, crashed in Roswell and in Kingman, Arizona that same year of 1947.
Actually, I have some really good, reliable information concerning Roswell, but to accept it, we have to change our timeline to match the 1890 uh, barrier, okay, in our minds to realize that we actually had this equipment as early as that.
Let
The
me,
actual.
have you started your screen share, because I don't see the images yet.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. On that point, before you go on, I'd like to say that there is some confirmation of what you're saying regarding Tesla, because I have a document that's called Estimate of the Situation, and this was a report, Estimate of the Situation on Flying Saucers and National Security, written in 1947 and presented to Hoyt Vandenberg, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And in it, it says that they did recover the craft, and they did recover some bodies, including a live extraterrestrial who was debriefed. And according to him, the reason they came to Earth was that someone here, a scientist, had put out a very powerful beam in the 1890s and 1920s, and that it had disrupted their planet, their gravitational system, their weather, and their ecosystem, that they had signaled back to the scientist to turn off the beam, but he didn't understand how to decipher the signal. So then they decided to come here. Personally, to see what was going on this planet that was disrupting their gravity, most importantly, and their weather and ecosystem. So, and then the report nails Tesla and decrees that Tesla is an outlaw scientist, and then decreed that all science in the United States had to come under government control and oversight, so that such people, outlaw scientists like Tesla, couldn't do things like this ever again. Back to you.
Well, actually, there's a lot to support what you're saying, as well as the slow deterioration of the education from World War II to 1958. 1958, they took about 30% of the electronics standard knowledge out of the high school curriculum, and that was plasma physics. And this plasma physics is what these propulsions are based on, as well as the frequencies and voltages involved. We've had a low voltage strap that we've had to deal with. It's 120. We have 220 in Europe, but the actual higher voltage or higher voltages and frequencies are much safer in order to work with, and that was never explored because of the effects that we can bump into and have bumped into.
Let's see.
One of the things that might shed some light on Roswell to make it even more credible, rather than trying to support the dogma surrounding it, is the Roswell accident was actually a U.S. aircraft. And I can put things together here for you that would suggest very strongly that it was. The shape of it, the type of aircraft, the description is identical to an aircraft seen at Moray Island, and actually caused a major accident on Moray Island, but it's a little bit ahead of the story here.
Okay.
Basically, go ahead.
Just take your time. We've got an hour.
Okay. All right. Well, basically, in order to start the conversation, what we first need to do is find why I can move this timeline back into the 30s. Now, first of all, we all agree that some of the first Foo Fighter reports that surfaced was in late 1942, 1943, that these spheres began actually shadowing P-17s. Now, what was interesting about it is the fact that they would launch several of them, and several spheres would go one way where they had come from, and then several spheres would be going, and the reason being that it would have this division. Okay, one would go in the direction they came, and the other one would go straight toward them, is that they were following their exhaust plume. And it had a snorkel on it that could identify the exhaust plume, and it would do a circle, and then it would identify where or which direction that exhaust plume is pointed. Well, some of them would go, the wrong direction. Some of them would go the right direction. So when we had sightings of 9 of these balls, it may have just been coincidence that so many actually went the right direction. They were designed in order to interrupt radio and engines, which is reportedly questionable. In one side, they say it was a complete failure. On the other side, we do have reports of the engines and radio equipment and radio failures due to the electrical magnetic radiation that was coming off of these. And it's not so much radiation as free electrons. And it was exhausting so many free electrons in the area and energizing everything so badly that electronics just simply ceased to function.